And one of the teams to watch, the Chicago Cubs. Ooh. Why the Cubs? Well, here's why. They've got 7 of the top 100 prospects because, of course, Profar is left to sign with the Braves to give up someone of Owen Casey's ability, but that's exactly the kind of player who could make trading Dylan Cease worth the while.
Whether it's Cease or King, do the Cubs really need another one-year rental on this roster? And is the roster already set potentially? If it is, there's reason for optimism. Let's talk about it right now here on the Set It Man. Hey, what's up, Cubs fans? It's me, Kyle Stanley, and really the question at this point is this roster set? Yes, there are options out there for trading for starting pitchers. Yes, there's still bench options. Yes, there's still bullpen options. In fact, the Cubs just signed another bullpen guy today, Brandon Hughes, a reclamation project coming back to the Cubs. So there are still things that are probably going to happen here with this roster, but at $207 million, is there a need for another maybe bigger signing, mid-signing, a couple more small signings? We're going to talk about that here today, and I'm also going to have a Ben Brown interview for you next week, so be on the lookout for that. That is a guy that I've been really looking forward to talking to for a while. Got to meet him at CubsCon, and he's excited to be on the channel as well, so be on the lookout for that right before we hit spring training. So again, I want to talk about two things here. The overall roster, is it already set going into spring training, and this Michael King and Dylan Cease rumor. So let's start with the overall roster. I've got the 40-man up, and let's just assume for a second that the bullpen is already set, that there's some mix of 8 guys amongst everyone that you're seeing on the 40-man roster. That means that these are the guys that we're going into when the season starts in Tokyo. Now, on the starting pitcher side, there definitely still could be another move to be made, although Jed has hinted that the bigger plan is the bench and the bullpen. But if you look at the starting pitching, the Cubs are really 1 or 2 injuries away from having to rely on Colin Ray as a starter. So you've got in the 1 through 3, that's pretty much already set. You got Steele, Imanaga, Tyone. Of course, as Matthew Boyd was signed by the Cubs, you expect him to be the 4th starter. And then likely Javier Assad or Jordan Wicks, and whichever one does not make the starting rotation will likely either be a AAA guy or will go into a long relief role. But once again, you've got Colin Ray for that role as well. And then you've got your starting 9 in the field, including the DH. So do all the math here. We've got 22 guys. So that means there's 4 spots left on the bench. John Birdie, definitely one of them. At this point, Vidal Brujan is one of them. At this point, Gage Workman has to be one of them because he's either going to be a Rule 5 guy who stays on the 26-man roster all year long, or he gets sent back to the team that the Cubs originally got him from. So that's 3, and then assuming that the Cubs don't DFA Alexander Canario, he has no options left, so that's your 4th guy on the bench. That's 26 men. So to me, at this point, if we're just looking at this from a kind of bird's eye view, it feels like the starting pitching and the bullpen would potentially be set. And talking to Tyler Zombro yesterday, it kind of sounds like that.
With the Presley acquisition, that like kind of really nailed down a lot of things for us, and super excited about that. It's great to have Presley in there to kind of anchor it down. And we have all the other bases covered, in my opinion. I mean, when it comes to the roster stuff, like Jed and Carter are working nonstop to figure out where we can get 1% better. From my viewpoint on the pitching side, like we've pretty well locked down everything we need.
Now, is there an opportunity for the Cubs to bolster this starting pitching rotation? There absolutely is, and it does have a domino effect for guys that would either be shipped out or maybe put into the bullpen, making the bullpen probably stronger as well. But if it's Michael King or Dylan Cease, it's going to be probably too high of a cost. And this is what the Padres are really good at. When they shipped off Juan Soto to the Yankees, they got a huge package in return because that's what they asked for. So the Padres are good at kind of robbing any sort of farm system from whoever they're doing deals with. And that right now, yes, makes the Cubs a great candidate to do a deal with them, but does it make us feel good? And according to Jacob Zanola, who's on Twitter, he's done a great job of developing a lot of really good sources within the MLB. He says it's going to cost Shaw and then some. guys, not just Shaw, not just our starting third baseman for the 2025 campaign and potentially years and years to come, but plus more. And if we look at baseball trade values, that's already not a good idea, just Shaw alone. Shaw for Dylan Cease straight up is 39 compared to 33 on the surplus, so the Cubs need more than Dylan Cease to make up for that. And then for Michael King, it's 39 to 27.7. That's a huge gap, and they want Shaw plus more. This makes absolutely no sense, and the Cubs have to put a stop to this at some point. So you went outside your comfort zone, Jed, when you went and traded for Kyle Tucker. Now, whether that was a quote-unquote all-in move or just to be able to replace a more expensive version of Cody Bellinger with a better version of Bellinger and a cheaper version of Bellinger, plus giving up a prospect, which you look at prospects and you say, there's probably the likelihood that Cam Smith doesn't work out compared to actually becomes a superstar. So, to me, you had that 1-year rental, and then you go and get another 1-year rental in Ryan Pressly, which was fine because given the current bullpen market, $8.5 million plus a low A prospect is honestly a steal. So I'm good with that, but still, if we continue to look at these guys on 1-year contracts at the end of arbitration, at the end of their contracts, and now you're giving away, it's not going to be Matt Shaw. You know the Cubs are not going to go for that. But even if it's Owen Casey, now you're putting all your eggs into one basket of you've got to extend Kyle Tucker. If not, you're putting Seiya Suzuki back in right field. That's a step backwards. Or you're hoping that Kevin Alcantara is the guy. Or if you have to trade away both of them, Alcantara and Casey, then you've just depleted your entire outfield system. And that's the whole reason we build this thing up, right? Is to either trade when they're at their peak value, or it's to bring them in and give them playing time and see if they're the player for the future. Now, Keith Law didn't even put Owen Casey in his top 100 prospects. He had a tough time I don't even know if he ended up putting a full 100 list together. That's how low he is on prospects right now in the MLB. But that tells you something, that maybe Owen Casey is a guy that we've hyped up. Maybe he's a guy that is not going to be an everyday right fielder. Maybe he's going to be a bench role guy. Think of maybe a Todd Hollinsworth type is kind of what comes to mind for me. Maybe that's what you end up seeing from an Owen Casey. But all I know is Owen Casey to the Cubs right now is very valuable because if you have Seiya Suzuki go down, if you have one outfielder go down, you need another outfielder coming up to this system. And so Owen Casey is the most ready, it feels like, based on all of the reports that you're hearing from the minor leagues. So I worry about getting rid of a guy like that. I worry a lot less about getting rid of guys like Jefferson Rojas, James Triantos, maybe a guy who's a pitcher that isn't going to be ready until 2026. Maybe that's a Jackson Wiggins. I worry a lot less about those guys in these kinds of deals, but I do worry massively about Owen Casey, Cade Horton, Moises Ballesteros, Matt Shaw, those guys that are primed and ready. Now, if the Cubs and Padres can't come together on something, that means that the pitching is likely already set. Aside from, these random non-roster invitees and minor league deals that are continuing to be signed, there is a lot of guys still out there. Ryan Brazier was just DFA'd by the Dodgers, so there's opportunities out there, but based on what you heard from Zombro earlier, it feels like the pitching is set. Is that such a bad thing, Cubs fans? On the outside perspective, you look at it, you say they didn't get really anyone of impact outside of Ryan Pressly for both the starters and the relievers, but we have to continue to remind ourselves how big of a deal Tyler Zombro is to this organization. This is probably the wild card, the magic cheat code for all pitchers that come into this organization. If you missed my conversation with Zombro yesterday, I've got a few more snippets that I'm going to include in here, but the dude, we're calling him the pitching prophet. We had the professor in Kyle Hendricks. We have the pitching philosopher in Shota Imanaga. Now we have the pitching prophet in Tyler Zombro. Think about him as the ultimate defensive coordinator up in the Wrigley Field offices as the game is going on, seeing things from a perspective that Tommy or Craig can't, and being able to then take all this data and turn it into, here's what this guy has as a strength, and let's feed those strengths. Let's make this guy better. Let's maybe even tweak one of his pitches or add a pitch that we think will actually enhance the other pitches. And guys, maybe, I don't want to get you too excited, but maybe all of these minor league additions, all of these trades, the Cody Petites of the world, they just got Brad Keller as well. That's a name that a lot of us don't even remember, but he was a big deal in Kansas City. Some of these guys, maybe there's a Pedro Strop and a Jake Arrieta amongst this crew, and Tyler Zombro just has to bring out those strengths and enhance those strengths and add health and add performance to these guys. And before you know it, we might be like, hey, remember when they signed this guy over the offseason and we didn't think twice about it, and we were begging for David Robertson, or we were begging for Kenley Jansen, we were begging for Jack Flaherty, and we had something even better, a diamond in the rough, and Tyler Zombro was able to bring him to the forefront. That's what I am expecting to see something click. I'm not saying all. I'm saying there's going to be something that clicks here based on what Tyler Zombro does, the programs that he brings, the data-driven mindset that he brings, all of the technology that he has at his fingertips. And just to give you an insight of what that looks like, here's a little look behind the mind of Tyler Zombro and how he makes players better.
If we acquired this guy, what would we do? And then how much better do we think they get? Now, don't get me wrong. Like you certainly want to maximize every single guy you have, but inherently you might just feel a little bit better about taking a guy from here to here versus there to there, right? And we want you to have more carry to your fastball.
Okay.
If he raises his slot, it's going to make the cutter worse, the sweeper worse, the sinker worse, and the changeup worse, right? So now having tried to make one pitch better, we've lost the other four.
Yeah.
And so you're always weighing that in your head.
It's really exciting to hear a guy like this who joined the Cubs and is a mastermind of pitching. He's the pitching prophet. I'm telling you, we need to start keying this phrase. But we're going to see things that are really exciting, even just as early as spring training. Guys that are overperforming, guys that in the past have had struggles with being healthy and now suddenly are having a healthy spring training and actually putting some pressure on the guys that we thought were locks in the bullpen, locks in the rotation that might be giving us second thoughts. I'm really confident that that's going to happen this spring training. But maybe even more exciting, because of all the buzz of Tyler Zombro, because of all the buzz of all the pitching moves that the Cubs have made this offseason, to what caliber is up for you to decide. But Tyler says that there's a lot of guys that want to be Cubs right now.
We have had, it feels like so many guys with kind of requesting to be a Cub and wanting to have an NRI spot with us. And that's awesome, because I think ultimately as an organization, that's what you want, is you want a bit of the reputation of guys want to come here to get better. They know that we're going to help them maximize their asset value and help them become better players.
So what does that mean exactly? Well, yeah, I mean, the roster could be set, or you could see David Robertson wanting to make a reunion. You could see Jack Flaherty potentially taking a discount to come and be a Cub and to work with Tyler Zombro. You could see Ryan Brazier potentially, after a tougher 2024, come back to 2023 form and be that guy who's a late inning guy for the Chicago Cubs. Zombro's worked with a lot of Dodgers, so you know that there's probably some bugs in Brazier's ear right now that are saying, go check out the Cubs. So there's a lot of things to be excited about. I don't want you guys to just look at, well, all we got was Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray. Sure, Ryan Presley is great, but what version of him are we going to get? And Jed just keeps on signing these minor league contracts. There might be a diamond in the rough here. There might be something that Tyler Zombro can bring to the forefront. I don't want you to just overlook this and say just whatever's on paper is exactly what we're getting, because it's the magic that happens beyond the paper. This guy was one of the founders of Tread Athletics, one of the best organizations out there in terms of metrics, in terms of data-driven information to make pitchers better, healthier, perform better on the field, last longer on the field. This guy is someone that we need to be extremely excited about. So let me know, of all the things that we just talked about, what are you most excited about for Tyler Zombro to be a part of the Cubs? Do you think the roster is set? And also, at the end of the day, I do think that it would not surprise me if the Cubs get a couple more bench guys. A Mark Canha makes a lot of sense. Yohan Moncada now makes a little bit more sense given the fact that the Cubs have Birdie on their team, and I think that John Birdie from a first base, second base, and third base perspective can fill in any of those spots. So now you can roll the dice maybe on someone like Yohan Moncada as long as he's a good clubhouse guy. That's the big caveat there. There's a few guys out there that need homes, and I would not be surprised if Cubs grab a couple of those. But at this point, $207 million, I would like to say that Alex Bregman is an actual idea. I would like to say that Jack Flaherty is an actual idea, but the closer we get to spring training, the more I'm starting to realize that the Cubs are going to just go in probably with a very large gap between where their payroll is and where that first luxury tax threshold is, which is at $241. $34 million. There's a lot to play with there. Anything could happen, but based on my conversations with Jesse Rogers, Tyler Zombro, it feels to me like this roster is just about set. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. I'm going to go put my arm on ice. Thanks, Setup Nation.